Hello everyone. Hopefully my voice is loud and clear. It's technically very early Saturday morning, and some feeling within me pulled me towards the microphone. And believe it or not, it's getting cold here in Toronto, Canada, and like my fingers are like they're already freezing, but still, I feel the episodes, there's some value to share, for this day, for this moment. Anyways, I guess this episode is inspired by an inner vision. And when I wrote Future Stares at the Unfathomable World, it's a sort of a double-edged sentence where kinda in a rough way we can see that it's like the future stares at an unfathomable world. Or we can see it as future stares at an unfathomable world. That means people in the future are still staring at an unfathomable world, That means it could be the future staring, or it could just be the stairs, the focus. But anyways, in the subtitle I've written the finale of teachings and a tribute to Ramana Maharshi. There you go, this episode, its structures in view. Honestly, my own fascination as a human being, something I've noticed about myself, is that a part of me feels bored with the present. And I feel this boredom is kind of natural, because human beings are under the impression that they are functioning in a singular dimension, but when we realize there's multiple dimensions at work, and if a dimension can be said to be a showcase of reality, a multidimensional experience of life will be multiple showcases of reality. And so imagine a human being that has noticed what's in front of its eyes, but has realized the meaning of what is in front of his eyes is actually arising from behind his eyes, right? And what do we find behind our eyes? Personally, I have this opinion where I think a lot of people the question of who you are is the most important question. And it's a question that has double sides, where from one side, who you are can be a snapshot photo. You can give the memory authority or a vision or something, When people speak, usually it's as if they're a snapshot photo. When somebody says, I'm a good person, somebody says, or when we see someone as a bad person, these are like snapshot photos, right? So pretty much the double sides are static and dynamic. When a person wonders about who they are, even taking myself as an example, there is the idea of me, which I am right now using like an Iron Man suit to speak to the viewers. Like a second nature Iron Man suit. My name, the idea of me, and the image of myself, and this is something we don't talk about often, but I mean it's kind of one of those silent abidings with the innate design of culture. Pretty much what I'm trying to say is that the view we have of ourselves behind our eyes is private. It's like in a private room. right? So right now, as I'm speaking to the viewers can get a sense of who I am from their own eyes, but who I am to myself behind my eyes. Until I would say 2011, I had an obsession of the image of self, right? It was as if what are desires? They are visual showcases, or they are probabilities of reality, right? And if the probability is very appealing, the desire becomes intense, right? When I am, I would say, around others, this image of myself that I have, how can I say it? It's as if, like, deep down, what the human being is an unknown witnessing attention that encapsulates the whole moment rather than a part of it. But when we are communicating to a part of the world, it's easier to be a part of the world, right? What I'm trying to say is, to myself, I can have any image or any vision that just arises in my mind to be me, right? I could see, like, I remember, me and my brother and my cousin, we saw the Godfather movie, and literally after that, for a week, we were all acting like, show me respect, you know what I mean? Right? So what it was that the image of one moment became us, or the attention, which is actually deep down attributeless, right? And people are going to be like, Mr. Within, what do you mean attention is attributeless? What I mean is that sight is not an object, but what we find in sight is an object. And the nature of the mind is, whether your eyes are open or closed, it's like in more than just the physical room. That means anybody who sees an object and a word comes to their mind, you're not just in physical reality, you're also in a subjective reality, right? And the biggest issue we have is subjective positioning and synchronization with objective movement, For example, you see it, usually, I think everybody's like this when they're young, right? But what it is that one's appetite for manifestation is way more instant, Anyways, I'll just keep going. So, there's two ways to look at this question. Who am I? There's a view of the self, an image, a snapshot. The other side of it is that it is a film, and it's a movement. That means we are so conditioned as human beings to identify as just, photos, that we forget that we're not just changing in a world. By the nature of the presence of our being, we are the changing world, And the nature of the human mind is that because it is projecting two realities, it's like the body gives you access to, let's say the multiplayer physical reality, but the mind gives access to one's inner reality, and these two are overlaid for there to be any sort of meaning and movement at all. Right? That means we need an inner world to find meaning and to have something move in the outer world, but we also need to have an outer world for there to be an inner realm. Right? And there is a duality here, which in the subtitle where I've written Sri Ramana Maharshi's like final teaching, he comments on that. He makes a very important note. It's like, imagine we as a species just wanted everything to be normal. All those people who worship the normal, who worship normality. We are, in some sense, holding on to a collective illusion, There's this idea that a human being can be in a simulation, and we can also say that a species can be inside a simulation, not just a human being, Guys, I might have to actually make this into part 1 because it's really cold, but I'll go as far as I can. I went after this question, who am I? I attempted to solve the mystical Rubik's Cube. But in the middle of solving it, I began to realize that it's a living force. And so imagine in one angle, it's just a person's trying to calculate and move, but when it comes to a living reality, that means this world is not just the space we're in. It's life is how it's happening. If somebody says Mr.Within, how is the world alive? Well, it's just the consideration that there are even forces to move. The nature of it is that because we don't know first, whatever we know will be incomplete. And so the species needs to find a strategy to handle what it doesn't know. Right, that's something we haven't thought about. Normality is just based on what you know or what others know. That means imagine what kind of a sort of explorer you have to be, that you're trying to explore beyond the known reality. So there's an implication that the only way that's possible, or think of it this way, the only way to access an unknown world is not through a known self, it is through an unknown self. That means imagine the mysteries of reality and what is beyond this world is like a keyhole, and the key is our unknown self. Now, for a human being to establish a relationship with the unknown self doesn't mean insanity. It doesn't mean chaos, because chaos and order actually define knowledge. Imagine, let me tell you the power of the unknown. The power of the unknown is the teacher of duality. So what that means is any being found in a dualistic simulation similar to us, human beings on Earth, right? In a dualistic simulation, what's going to happen is that it's as if like good and evil, let's say the most good person, the most evil person are fighting, or they're arguing. And suddenly out of nowhere, appears an unknown third person. In a 2-player game, a third player appears. Now, the good asks the unknown, let's say third player, are you good or are you evil? And the evil says the same thing. Are you evil or are you good? Right? And this third player or third point of attention says that because I can perceive good and evil simultaneously, I cannot be good and evil. Because I perceive life and death as codependent ideology concepts, what is aware of life and death is neither alive and is neither dead, right? Now, I want to share with you the final teaching of Ramana Maharshi, which I've written it in the description, actually. Ramana Maharshi is like this very great sage, enlightened individual. And there's incredible stories about him. He was a very simple man, but this is his final teaching. There's neither creation nor destruction, neither destiny nor free will, neither path nor achievement. This is the final truth. It's another way of saying the ending of all endings and the beginning to all beginnings was never in the room where a dualistic game could continue. It's another way of saying the mirage in the desert, which was under the impression that the mirage was seeing the mirage, realizes it is not the mirage. You know, it's another way of saying that your dualistic mind and your physical, let's say in space, non-physical body, let's say your body and mind are appearances of the world, of the room. It's another way of saying, it's like what Ramana Maharshi is saying, I feel. He's saying it's like truth is in another room. It is beyond the games and attachments of this realm. You know, I feel all religions in the future will dissolve into this religion called Beyondism. And people would be like, what do Beyondists do, you know? And the idea is that the Beyondist doesn't need to do anything. You know, it's the strange view where through ultimate uncertainty, that is the moment of certainty. It's as if we are certain about our ultimate uncertainty. It's an interaction with a living realm and the texture of the moment. That means right now, think of it an astronaut walking in the moon, or some astronaut walking outside of a space station on the space station, right? It's as if like there is a weight. The texture to the moment of being has a weight to it, has a heaviness, right? Has a sort of substance orientation, right? But when it comes to movement in the mind, in the inner realms, the movement in the inner realms doesn't take that much energy. I'm not kidding, right? That means walking to a town, it's going to take a lot of energy, but to envision yourself already in a town you have been before is like an instantaneous event of the mind. That means if we were to kind of calculate the energy cost of us remembering what has happened, it's like in an instant, which suggests the most limited energy, the vision of the memory can be there. You know, that for some time I was wondering about it. I'm like, okay, we have this, concept, let's say, in the Abrahamic context where somebody like called an angel, you know, or there was this in some call, let's say in a darker context, it would be like somebody summoned something, you know, like a demon or something, right? And I had thought about what is the suggestion of this, and in some sense, what is this idea that, let's say, somebody in a moment of crisis calls for an angel and an angel appears, right? And the ability to receive the instantaneity of expression is kind of like, you know what it is? It's like I'm saying, aside from, let's say, a human being interacting with an abstract conceptual overlay on physical reality, it's as if the person's noticing how instantaneously it's happening, right? Something cool is when it comes to the future generations will be staring at the same universal problems we as a species tried to solve. We can say, like it can be said, that right now 2022 is a phase in history where man is trying to find heaven. But the future generations, it will be different. Heaven will try to find man. The nature of the mind, it takes the individual to a moment where they see they can't do anything with the unknown. The unknown breaks all the implications of language, and so like an experiential presence is remembered. How many human beings have opened their eyes on this planet, wondering about the question, who am I? Staring into a world where its edge they cannot see, but from another angle, their mind is being one edge of the world. It's like right now, if I take the flatland analogy, like if we were all squares, it's like imagine right now my words and my body is in a dimension where there's squares. Now imagine my mind and beyond my mind, and I have, just to simplify it for viewers, I pretty much entertain three dimensions to life. There's a visible dimension, visible perspective. There's an invisible perspective, and there's an inconceivable perspective, right? And all those people who are still trying to get enlightened, they haven't discovered the inconceivable nature of being. They haven't realized it because they're still looking for something. The way I would say that, if I was to conceive the modern enlightenment game, or let's say the enlightenment game for future generations, it wouldn't be like, how do I get enlightened? It would be as if post-enlightenment, as if an enlightened being doesn't need the concept of enlightenment, and its eyes are looking at what is beyond that concept. People have been seeking, or subconsciously seeking, salvation beyond the conditions of life. But where those conditions come from, and the mystery of how there is an inconceivable presence that is deciding believe it or not, this might sound strange, but the soul is this. it's like the poetically, the soul is the aftermath viewer of every decision. I consider to myself an inconceivable presence. And when I realize that when I reverse engineer through all the ideology that I have clothed myself in, there is a sort of naked truth there. And that naked truth is the untouchable. That's what I got to. I don't know, maybe there's some yogis out there who they found truths they can give people, like they're giving them an apple. But in reality, what I realized, and it freed me to some degree from, I would say, my Raja Yogic karma. Right? Imagine someone trying to solve, the hardest problem ever. And in the middle of solving the hardest problem, the person's like, where is the simplicity in this? And the simple perspective of reality is that it doesn't have to be anything at all. You know what it is? Imagine a soul was walking in a museum and there was a sign, don't touch the objects. And imagine an unknown soul touched an object, and the moment it touched the object, it entered that reality. And so imagine now you want to step out of the reality that you touched, and so you remember a moment before you touched it, right? And the inconceivable presence is not playing the game of death and life. Life and death are the mind's interpretation of the mystery. And to some degree the body's, journey. The invisible dimensions to life are just the nature of mind and everything that only attention touches. So I can touch this table in front of me. This is the visible dimension, visible perspective on life. But I can't touch the idea of my name, which I have, right? Like I could visualize the letters of my name in front of me, but I can't touch them. Do you see? Because it's as if they are, it's like attention is touching it first. Excuse me. There was a time where I was thinking that what is nature doing, and I thought, is nature creating its own dictionary of manifestation? Could it be that it's as if like, we're inside a program that's programmed to endlessly archive itself and learn from itself? Really the concept of survival in a known world makes sense, but in an unknown world, how do we know? That survival is the game we should be playing. It's like the person's like, okay, what's my body gonna do? And simply enough, the world has content for it to engage. There's a landscape for it to move in. The mind says, let's say the invisible dimension, let's say visible self, inconceivable witness. The visible self is working with the visible world. The invisible self is working with the invisible dimensions of the world. And the invisible dimensions of the world, it's not just what we... It's considered invisible because we can't see it with biological eyes. Like personality or let's say before somebody speaks and they have something to say, it's as if others can't hear it yet. I guess what I'm trying to really say in this episode, just to make it easier for myself, is that in the future there will be human beings and they will stare at how bizarre and mysterious this world is. They will wonder what to do. And so one angle is you look at all that you have and you use it. Another angle is you get down to trying to discover the nature of the user. That means it's as if for some people, achievement is like a self getting something, and for others, an achievement could be discovery of the truths of their own mysterious nature of being. And you know what the hard truth is? The hard truth is that everything doesn't have to be anything. Many ancient texts and even yogis, they talk about freedom. But I find that if you are looking for freedom, you are not free. It's as if freedom has become your master. But what would the notion of a freedom from freedom look like? And this is where spirituality takes a round circle. Where, from the simulated earths, you return to the original earth. It's like matter is not, divine. The person seeks a spiritual truth, but then you come back to realizing matter never needed to be an illusion. That means hilariously the awakening from the samsaric existence is through the recognition that the samsara is not there. So it's another way of saying the way out of suffering is to see who does suffering exist to and realize that who is not in the suffering. So it's as if like a way to get out of a simulation is to realize it never was a simulation. That's the path I took, or I would say that's the path that found me. I sometimes, ask myself, just wonder, do I love this world? I ask that from myself. And then my mind takes me to a moment where I am like, how am I defining love, right? And so far, I would say the vision is like of the ultimate life, right? That means the unconditional. That means they say unconditional love, but I feel that the truth of love is the unconditional. And the unconditional means you can't do anything about it. It's kind of like the greatest form of love is a love that is just being. It's like the whole nature evolves rather than a conditional pattern repeating. And when I read this thing from Ramana Maharshi, I'll read it again. He says, so Ramana Maharshi's final teaching, he says, there's neither creation nor destruction, neither destiny nor free will, neither path nor achievement. This is the final truth. And then somebody, like if I was there, I shouldn't say if I was there, but like if somebody could have been there when Ramana Maharshi said this and be like, okay, this means we shouldn't do anything, and Ramana Maharshi would probably nod his head. And that's the nature, guys. Truth is how being is being regardless of what is happening. That's the truth. Because that's the only thing. It's as if, like, it's another way of saying it's like the only thing that doesn't change is change. You know, it would be equivalent. You know, somebody once told me an incredible sentence. And they said, trust your soul. And I remember when I heard that, this was like fairly recent, I would say two months ago maybe. Somebody told me, trust your soul. And for a moment, I just felt the soul is beyond object, subject, so it would be this strange thing where an unknown attention is trusting the unknown world. And that trust leads to the ultimate liberation. That because freedom is free, it trusts. You know what's strange? Maybe the future generations could, you know, sympathize with me. We are still not being like a species at its original capacity. What I mean by this is that we're not properly being human beings yet. We think like the idea of human being is just this, but I'm telling you, it's like the future generations. There is a huge chance, there's a probability that their reception of communication would become so instantaneous that language becomes obsolete and it becomes just film transfer. It would be another way of saying, like, instead of speaking to share what's on your mind, you could just instantly share your mind with others, you know. It could be like me giving these 10,000 talks. If I was like born in the future, like, it wouldn't be necessary. It's just I would just sit and anything I thought, everybody would have access to, you know. But, you know, at least for podcasters, you know, they're not just speaking in microphones, they're experiencing how they are being microphones in history, you know. It's like we don't know. Look at the human condition. We don't know what is looking out through our eyes, and we don't know what we're looking at. And when I say we don't know, it's like the amount, it's based on the humility we can have as a species. I sometimes find from intellectual circles, when they look at, for example, like a religious villager, right? It's as if they feel like it's as if the individual has not permitted themselves an ability to recognize that it's unknown first before known. Because if it is unknown, anybody who says that it's like believe, like here's something I would say honestly, it's one of my theological mysteries. Like, if you're a theologian, respond to this in the comment section. But for me, I don't understand how in Abrahamic traditions they say God is inconceivable, yet you have to pray to the inconceivable. And I don't want to focus on the cultural connotation of prayer, but I just want to say it's like worshipping the inconceivable cannot be conceptually done. Do you see? That means this might sound very strange, but it's as if without faith, it's an automated state. That means the grandchildren of all religious people people, their grandchildren in the future are just going to become automated natural beings. When I say automated natural beings, right now free will is intervening. Free will finds itself separate to the environment. But if everything is the movement of an inconceivable source, then who are we? Who is anything, right? Religion's purpose is to return the attention of all individuals back into the inconceivable. For me, I noticed that experience will eventually go to the inconceivable. That means if somebody says, Mr. Within, do you know what the afterlife's going to be like? I'll be like, no, but I have an idea of what's going to come after this life, right? And it all depends on how much before our lives we discovered the truth of experiential being beyond the actions of ideological systems. Something I have had to cultivate, something I'm still learning from, and also to share what I consider will come after this lifetime. And this is just a probability, my mind's projecting. But what that projection is that the conscious waking state of life right now is a journey of the body. So imagine like a mechanic, let's say like consciousness opened its eyes and it had just teleported into a moment where it was a mechanic holding a wrench and had no memory of the past. That means that was the first thing. And so imagine you're a mechanic holding a wrench, or an inventor holding a tool, and you're looking at an invention, and the question comes, like, the person's like, okay, I'm a mechanic holding a wrench, there's a machine in front of me, what could the purpose of life be? So when it comes to physical life, it's kind of like what nature has equipped you with to engage nature, right? So I am treating my physical life as if I am a temporary inventor of every moment of manifestation of my perception. For me, I'll be honest, like, I went through a phase of loneliness, like kind of like yogic level loneliness, and it was self-induced. What I mean by that is that I just identified more as a creature of mind than as a creature of my body. And I suddenly asked myself, where do I belong as a soul? I asked this, and then I realized the amount of love, poetically speaking, my soul had for my own body. That means I asked myself, do I care for my physical existence? And a part of me is like, yeah, you do. Right? And so I wondered, okay, there is a sort of relationship of me caring for one human being that is my own self, but it's like, believe it or not, where the souls of human beings belong in the earth is actually in the future. It's just we heard the past first. I feel children in primary school should just be, like, for storytelling, the teachers should just be reading science fiction stories. And then middle school could be like, the present, and then high school could be studying the past. Because imagination is not something like you're born with. Imagination's kind of like saying, if you position the antenna differently, it picks up something else. Imagination is accessible to anyone who explores beyond how their past defines their present. Whoever you are listening, if you're still, fascinated by the idea of imagination, it's another way of saying it's inner world walking as an explorer, which is considering that it's like unknown eyes are exploring a knowable world, and they have a choice to identify with every step they take. Right now, I am I'm honest enough to admit to myself that there's so many ways that human perception is happening on this planet that I am just one person speaking. But when I ask, how can one person experience the collective self of the moment? And the answer is the species, right? So think of it this way: the ancient yogi went into the cave, closed its eyes, and discovered the collectivity of itself through its being. But I'm like this human being with a name, and I'm like this object which a subject is moving, and that subject is wondering what to identify with. And it's like suddenly I notice this whole time we have been members of the human species. Like if I designed, in my visions of an advanced civilization, this idea is there. But I see it more like everybody already has a title. The moment you are born on Earth, you get a title of Earthling, or we should probably find a better word. And it's like, I'm just saying, there's so much value that's just not acknowledged, in the language matrix of, let's say, how would I say it, like psycho-socio-cultural perspective, let's say. The free will is a reaction to previous content placed by the world that's already there, right? Anyways, just the idea of titles. That means in an advanced civilization, every person is given the title of an advanced communicator, or an advanced, it's as if, it's like, imagine, suddenly the human being found a portal, and the portal took him to the Andromeda galaxy on a planet that was similar to Earth, let's say. And let's say in that planet, let's say Earth look-alike planet, they ask the person, imagine, like, who are you? And you say, I am a member of the advanced civilization that is the presence of humanity on Earth, the advanced humanity. Right, what I'm trying to say is that this whole time we have been living, identifying, like, look at this, we've been identifying with our name, we have been identifying, with our personality, or let's say the personalities as extended into an identification with one's, let's say, group or city, and then nation, right? Like, we have identified with nations, but we have not yet as a species identified as being planetary entities. That means we have forgotten that we are all part of the same team of existential design. That there is no stupid or smart human being, because it is the destiny of the human species that suggests we were smart or stupid. That means it's like on a sinking ship, there's nobody that's smart. On a flying ship into outer space, everybody's a genius. And let me tell you why. Because it's this implication of not the group identity, but or let's say of the ultimate group identity. That means, let's say the average person's going about through the day, and they have this sort of, let's say, relationship of identity where they're like, okay, I am a, let's say the person's like, okay, I'm a citizen of this nation. Let's say the person's like, what I'm trying to say is that just like how we can identify with our body, and we can identify with the name of the land we're in, right? Similarly, this whole time we could be identifying as the vision of the species. The most advanced communicators, human beings on this planet that will arrive in the future, the pilots that will land in the future. It's as if you could think that I shouldn't say think, but you imagine you're a species wondering what to do in the cosmos, rather than you're a person wondering what to do in a city. And I'm saying that perspective has been accessible to us from the beginning, and somehow the species forgot it, right? That means we jumped to the idea of God. People were trying to get to heaven, but people did not, try to realize they're part of the same species, right? That means, to be honest, if somebody said, Mr. Within, what has been the biggest cause of disaster in manifestation, I would say dualistic extremism. Like, it's as if some people look at what was it called, the witch trials. Like, it's this book called Crucible, and it's just this idea that it's like when the concept of a witch came, they had, in the medieval times, they had this kind of barbaric, I mean, not in the Crucible, it's not that medieval, but I'm saying in medieval times there was a barbarism where it's as if who they didn't like instantly became their enemy, or who they didn't like was branded as like, bad, right? Like, there was this thing, I think they made a parody of it, but it was like Monty Python made a parody of it, but it's like, they would throw, it's like when they thought somebody was a witch, right, they would throw that woman like into the water, and they were like, okay, if she floats to the top, she's not a witch, or sorry, I'm getting this wrong, if she drowns, if she comes back to the top of the water, she's a witch, if she drowns, then she's not a witch, right? And it was kind of like this brutal savagery of man's mind imposing judgment on a changing world, right? But what I'm trying to say is that duality, it's like dualistic extremism is a great source of disaster, and it's like I'm talking about the dualistic nature of the mind, right? That means it's like, rather than having this perspective that we are human beings and we are efficient or inefficient, we had this view where it was like good or evil, absolute definitions, right? That means it's like, this might sound strange, but it's as if the dictionary became us, or we became the dictionary, right? Like, right now, if somebody made a dictionary of names, of all the names of human beings on the planet, and imagine under each name their life's work and everything they did was there. This would be an impossible dictionary to make, but still. I guess it all goes to this, that it's time for the species to act like a species. We have been convinced of our suffering too early. Whoever you are listening to me, don't for one moment be convinced by your suffering. And keep in mind that the potential of the species awaits. That's honestly, I would say, one feeling that makes me feel like it's worth talking to the species, right? Because honestly, if I couldn't envision an advanced civilization here, then it would be like, I would be like, okay, well, there's nothing to talk about. But because I see as if like, where can the genetics go to subjective self-modification, right? That means like an object through an evolutionary process somehow became a subject to itself, whether this was a survival strategy or whatever, right? Or some mysterious interventional force. But it could be that, or let me say, people are not accessing the planetary mind. At least some philosophers called it logos. They named it, right? But we are not living with our planetary ability. You know, pretty much civilization 1.0 was an unnatural divergence from nature. And the savageness of nature is kind of being ignored through an illusion of civility. But now I'm saying for civilization 2.0, excuse me, for civilization 2.0, we are eternal eyes. That means when I think about what the most advanced civilization would be, it would be an advanced civilization ad infinitum. I find it so strange that we as a species have ignored our future because the past and present convinced us of it. The future is our unknown life, the past is our unknown life, and the present is the mystery that moves it all. If one identifies with if somebody's looking for their true nature beyond time, it is not a concept. But if one is looking for truths in time, and if you're wondering about the truth of the past and the truth of the future and truth of the present, the dynamism is the answer. So it's as if the truth of a photo was a film. The truth of a person in one moment of the space-time continuum believing things, it's as if it's the dynamism of all of it that becomes the truth. What's going to happen after this life is that the limitations of the body cannot be identified, and this, let's say, unknown attribute, this attention that is looking through your eyes, will have to confront what it is. The body's karma is very obvious. The body's karma is as if it finishes in this dimension. We don't know if the mind's karma finishes after this life. There's a suggestion it doesn't. And the suggestion, I'll give you an example. Like in Tibetan Buddhism, when somebody dies, they cremate the body. So, and then like 40 Buddhist monks or something read sutras that are trying to guide the soul that is standing above its body to like where it needs to be. So in Tibetan Buddhism, their culture is so conscious and so compassionate that even when somebody has died, they're still trying to guide that individual. You know, honestly, Tibetan Buddhism is on another level. Like it's such on another level that it's not something that modernity can decipher. You know? But the implication being that once the body is gone, the mind could still be here. And the mind, if there was a chance, I'm just saying, just consider a probability, a possibility that the mind doesn't die, the body does. And when I say the mind doesn't die, I'm talking about one's invisible life. The poet Rumi has this quote from 700 years ago. It goes something, if I remember correctly, it's like, you have to work in the invisible as much as you work in the visible. So right now, for example, the amount of effort that it is taking me to manifest in this moment in the invisible dimensions, it is equivalent. And I would say the reason Rumi said this is because back in the day, I would say maybe people didn't have a proper notion of a thought. What really thoughts are, they are actually inner events. But they don't teach you this in the educational system. You know, it's as if like really what knowledge is how views were named. And this is why philosophy is very important, because philosophy is the inspiration of new names to new views. Anyways, guys, it's I forgot how cold it is. I'm gonna end the episode. I'm going to say some final words. This is a very big concept because it extends into the future, and it also goes beyond the language threshold. The language threshold is a concept I've designed where I'm suggesting that there will come a point where the species will advance beyond being an object and subject, and this temporary human body in a physical world simulation, inner simulation, is in some sense like it's a unique phase in history. You know, that means I wondered, it's like, could it be that human beings are just a phase of nature, or are they the point of nature? That means the purpose of nature. And I am being more convinced, just by how many of us are here, that there is a greater intent that the universal sector has for the role of the human species. That means extraterrestrials and all this, the moment the fear of individual life goes away, collective ways of life naturally open. And people think that extraterrestrial contact is like aliens landing down and us shaking hands, but in actuality it's the recognition that we are in an alien world. And when I say alien world, I don't mean fictional extraterrestrial, I mean an unknown world. That means even if an extraterrestrial comes and says I'm like some superior enlightened extraterrestrial, I'll be like, buddy, it's an unknown world, what are you so sure about? Right? You know, and that's the nature of mysticism. They would say that there was this saying that in the Mahabharata, authored by Rishi Vyasa, there's moments where Rishi Vyasa, he's like this very liberated sage, and he's actually a prince, right, in the story. He's like this prince who has renounced like the royal life, and he's gone into the forest to meditate, right, and he discovers such inner truths that it's as if like there's a title they give to him, that Rishi Vyasa is the incarnation of God in language. I remember reading this, and I'll say this, that the idea was that Rishi Vyasa was so beyond the normalness of life, beyond duality, that the gods, the devis, and higher, how would I say it? The demigods would visit Rishi Vyasa to absorb to learn from his wisdom, right? It's this notion that Earth is like the right atmosphere for the universe to remember itself. The unknown awaits all that is known, and to fear the unknown doesn't make sense, because it's unknown. Fear is illogical. Inner fear, outer fear, there is logic to it. If you're in a burning house, run. But I'm saying, like, in the inner realms, the mind, it's like the greatest ability a human being can cultivate is how their humanness and their, like, we use the word human being and we think that's one entity, but it's actually two modes of reality being one entity. We are the eyes of the world, really. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful, and blessings to all those beings who care to look beyond what they saw. Much blessings and all.